A Giants podcast for Giants fans
by Giants fans.
It's Shaun Morash.
On the sideline, into the end zone. Touchdown, Giants!
From the offseason to the wins and the losses, it's time to take one Giant step.
All right, welcome into One Giant Step. 2 weeks out from draft day. I was going to say draft week. 2 weeks out from draft week, draft day. And I'm stumbling and bumbling. I'm Shaun Morash. He's Bryce Gelman. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on One Giant Step. Remember, if it's the first time you're finding us, welcome aboard. If you're a repeat listener, welcome back. Download, subscribe to One Giant Step everywhere podcasts are available. We have these next 2 weeks of draft lead up. Of course, probably multiple episodes reacting to what happens with the New York Giants in the NFL draft. And then, we look ahead. We'll have schedule release and whatever else is to come in the off season. So I'm getting a little, I got to be honest with you, burnt out, Bryce, not from doing podcasts, just from the incessant, what is this team going to do? What is that team going to do? And, be that as it may, where you're standing right now, Bryce, before we kind of delve into what's the latest Giant draft rumors here on your frustrations or excitement level with the NFL draft 2 weeks out.
Well, listen, I'm not the one talking about it 4 hours a day on the radio, so I'm not as burnt out as you. I'm excited, dude. I think there's less uncertainty regarding what the Giants are potentially going to do at 3. We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about it. But I like the lead up in that the Giants have a chance to add a generational talent here. And we're starting to see less and less about Shedeur to the Giants at 3. If that wasn't the case, I'd be burned out by this point. But I think I'm liking where this is going now, Shaun.
All right. Well, can I ask you to do an experiment, Bryce, for me? Block out anything you've read or heard the last 2 weeks regarding the Giants and the draft rumors. Block it all back, okay?
Okay.
Put Bryce Gelman in the time capsule of the season ending, and the Giants are picking 3rd overall. Can you do that for me, buddy?
Yeah.
Okay. If the only piece of information we know is that the Titans are taking Cam Ward, number 1 overall. It's the only piece of draft news we know that we can concrete say. And this is January the 15th. Let's just pick an arbitrary date. The Giants have not signed anybody yet. What does Bryce Gelman want the Giants to do with the number 3 pick? We haven't even seen the combine. We haven't done any of that.
Still take Abdul Carter. I don't think I've ever been in on Shedeur at 3. I think you could go through the archives. You could watch the podcast. I don't think I've ever once said I really want Shedeur at 3. Like, I've never once said that that's the correct value for where Shedeur Sanders needs to go and that the Giants need to draft him there. Of course, they need a quarterback. I didn't know what they were going to do in free agency, but I never once thought that this front office should reach on a guy that they're not 100% sure on. And, of course, a couple months ago, it seemed like they were all in on Shedeur. They were at every single one of his games. Like, they were everywhere. And they were talking to Shedeur and all that, all the signs pointed to them wanting to draft Shedeur. But I've never thought that that's the right pick at 3. So
okay, all right. You said all that. Can I ask you to put a pin in that for a second? Just put a pin in those thoughts, okay? Because I think it's important. I think it's important context. Now let's fast forward. The latest Giants news. We are taping this on Friday, April. What the heck date is it? The 10th? I've lost track on dates here.
11th.
The 11th. Friday, April 11th, the year 2025, and Abdul Carter is at the Giants facility still at the time of taping this. And Abdul Carter is taking a picture of the outside linebacker's office room with a picture of Lawrence Taylor. Just tweeted that out. Very cool. Look, very, 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 very cool. Let's talk about this Abdul Carter buzz. But Bryce, again, as I direct this podcast, I'm going to ask you not to talk about it in the context of Abdul Carter versus Shedeur Sanders, but let's just talk about the idea of taking Abdul Carter in general. Yep. Okay, block out the Shedeur stuff.
Yep.
So for me, Bryce, if I go back to January 15th, that question I just gave you, I'm operating under the assumption that the Cleveland Browns are either taking Shedeur Sanders or Abdul Carter, and then I am dealing with it's either Abdul Carter versus Travis Hunter, or it's Travis Hunter versus Shedeur Sanders, okay? Now that we fast forwarded to here, and I think Todd McShay threw a lot of smoke out there about Travis Hunter and the Browns. I heard Dane Brugler do an interview with our old buddy DA on the DA show where he says he's heard from people in Cleveland that the Browns actually view Travis Hunter as more of a wide receiver than a corner, and that's where they would use him. I thought very insightful and interesting, but that leaves Abdul Carter sitting there at 3rd overall. Now, depending on who you talk to, the debate is Abdul Carter versus Travis Hunter for the best player in the draft. Okay. And if we're just speaking on Abdul Carter merits, I'm going to speak on why I have come around to this more and
Yeah.
more and more. Number one, I kind of thought the Browns were going to take Abdul Carter. So I don't think I fully wrapped my hands around it. But if they're not, I tweeted this out a little while ago. I don't know if you saw this, Bryce, at Shaun Morash, but when people rip apart the New York Giants, you can rip them apart for a variety of reasons, right? Taking too long to get the talent going, the quarterback situation, but the word identity has been thrown around a lot, right? What is the Giants' identity? It was running the ball with Saquon Barkley. Remember, they spoke about it on Hard Knocks themselves. So what became the identity? And I think that, trying to get explosive plays with Malik Neighbors, very hard to do without consistent quarterback play, I think was semi their identity. I think taking Abdul Carter relieves the pressure and the stress of that. Abdul Carter, if he's always cracked up to be, and you never know. I mean, could he become Vernon Golston? I don't even want to think of a world where they take a guy who does that. But if he's always cracked up to be, after the trade you swung for Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau is still here, and you could decide what he's worth after this year, contract extension-wise, or letting him walk if Abdul Carter's here. To me, it's a good problem to have. And Dexter Lawrence is here. Obviously, you still need to figure out the other defensive tackle stuff. What's his name? Chauncey Golston, the guy they signed from Dallas, who can give you a little third down pass rush as well. I look at this Giant team, and I don't think anybody in their right mind can look at them and go, they don't have an identity. Their identity would be, we're gonna get after the quarterback down in and down out and make it, as hard as possible to pass. They've also signed Javon Holland and then Paulson Adebo, a guy who's a ball hawk who can, capitalize on turnovers and would benefit from a big time pass rush. So just strictly from that, Bryce, I'm a little older than you, but the Justin Tuck, Michael Strahan, O.C. Umenyiora, then eventually, even after Strahan retired or whatever, before you want to do that, they drafted Matthias Kiwanuka in the first round. Later on, drafted Jason Pierre-Paul in the first round. The Giants didn't care how many players they had at an edge position at any given time. If that was where the value was, they added to it. And you see teams like the Niners that kind of got built in the trenches that way, to a lesser extent, but I guess because it's more meatier in the middle, what the Eagles have done building in the trenches. I'm always going to be in favor of trying to make the trenches your strength. And if you're going after an attack on the quarterback, and Abdul Carter is as good as advertised, man, I don't think I walk away from draft night disappointed at all. And at least the New York Giants would enter 2025 with a solid answer on something, and that is, what's your identity?
Dude, this is my favorite talking point I've ever had across any of the talk stuff that I've done, because it all fits seamlessly into one big take. And that's the idea that certain teams and certain cities and certain teams within that city have an identity. And that identity is something that's helped them win in the past. And when you look at teams like the Knicks, when you look at my teams, when you look at the Yankees, when you look at the Giants, and more specifically the Giants, of course we're talking about the Giants, but I think the Giants one reigns truer than the other ones. What has been the biggest facet, the best part of all those Super Bowl winning Giants teams, Shaun? You know the answer. Everyone knows the answer. It's the pass rush. I think that it's true across the entire NFL, that if you have a good pass rush, it hides a lot of terrible parts of your team, specifically the secondary. The secondary doesn't become as big of a problem if you can get to the quarterback just rushing 4 or rushing 3. When you look at those Giants teams in 2007 and 2011, the amount of guys they had, they weren't worried, we have too many guys. You can never have too many pass rushers. You can never have too many inside guys. The Giants have the best one in the NFL in Dexter Lawrence. The Giants have Brian Burns, who obviously they've dedicated a lot of money towards long term. The Giants could add a generational edge rusher in Abdul Carter. And they also could, they could throw Kayvon in the well, they could do whatever they want with Kayvon. They could trade him for assets. It gives them the flexibility.
They wouldn't do it. Stupid. I wouldn't do that anyway. I want to. By the way, long term, I want Kayvon here as long as the money is reasonable.
That's insane. That's insane. You got 3 guys on your defensive line that you're paying big money to. I don't know how much sense that makes, especially when you got the best edge rusher on a rookie deal. I don't know about that. Well, listen, that's another topic for another day. But I think that the identity of the Giants, they can return to that.
They had Tuck O.C. and Jason Pierre-Paul, man. They had Tuck O.C. and Jason Pierre-Paul. Wasn't a freaking issue then.
Is Kayvon on any of their levels? In my humble opinion,
Okay.
he's not.
Was Justin Tuck on any of those levels until he played with OC and Strahan?
Listen. This past year, Kayvon had Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence on the line with him. Did he look any better than he did in his first
He missed half the year
when he was healthy?
Okay, so here would be my counterpoint. That this shouldn't become a Kayvon Thibodeau thing, but the point is, when you're adding Abdul Carter, I'm looking to beef it up. I'm just saying this, man. Yeah. The Giants never played with leads, and they never played with leads for a variety of reasons. They got 0 out of the quarterback play. You're hoping Russell Wilson at least gives you average quarterback play, some big plays down the field. If this defense adds a guy like Abdul Carter and adds all these other little moves they've done, by the way, including helping up the corner, the safety, the secondary work, that defense now has a chance, with a little more help from the offense, to either force the issue on some turnovers or have a couple games where they're playing with leads. And Bryce, one more for you. When you're drafting Abdul Carter, you're drafting him with the eyes of the next 5 years, hopefully the next 10 years of him being, one of the focal point blue chip players on your team. But in terms of this upcoming season, we're going to get the schedule that comes out in May, but we know the opponents. And anybody who has talked about this Giant team has said, well, what's the point? They're going to be a 3-4 win team. Have you seen the teams they got to play? When Patrick Mahomes, who, by the way, the Giants will play this year, has lost Super Bowls, why has he lost Super Bowls? Because pass rush has annihilated him.
That's it, dude.
If they're playing Mahomes, if they're playing Justin Herbert,
Goff,
all right, Goff, obviously you want to talk about, Geno's not that great, but okay, let's just throw him in there. Bo Nix, they're going to play the Denver Broncos this year in year 2 for him. They're playing some names we know at quarterback, obviously Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott and Jaden Daniels. How is it that the Giants, without hitting on a Jaden Daniels of their own, can compete and steal games like this year? It's going to be because their pass rush knocks these quarterbacks senseless in waves. And I do think that of all the picks the Giants can make, and this includes Travis Hunter, who I'm not slighting in the least, it's more intriguing to me. I'm more nervous about that pick. I think Abdul Carter's presence and adding what they've done to the defense actually gives the Giants more hope for, let's just call more surprise wins or games you didn't think they were going to win this year based on everything they've built and how you beat teams like that.
100%. I'm just salivating at the idea of having a top pass rusher on a rookie deal for 5 years, Shaun. Like, with all the guys they have under contract on that defensive line, you have, again, the best defensive tackle and a top 3 defensive player in all of football in Dexter Lawrence. You got Brian Burns. You got Kayvon. You got the depth that you need. You add this guy, man. I am stoked at the idea of adding a guy of this caliber to the Giants. Again, it's just like, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth with the tough schedule next year and just winning in general in the NFL. The best way to go about winning is to build in the trenches. The offensive line, listen, you can have a middle of the road offensive line like the Giants did in 2011. As long as the pass rush is good, as I said before, it covers up a lot of the holes on your team. Because if you're holding here's the thing, just like you said, the one way you could stop a generational quarterback, a top quarterback in the league, is by getting into him, by getting in his head, by having him see ghosts. The other way you win, just in general, is also by getting to the quarterback. It's the only way to not only stop top end of line quarterbacks, but it's the only way to win. It's like, if you don't have a good pass rush, I can't think of many teams who've won the Super Bowl in the last 15, 20 years who didn't have a top end of the line pass rush. Think about it. Like, I'm with you, man. Because if you're getting picked apart by the opposing quarterback, how are you going to win in the playoffs? How are you going to win? It's impossible. And this would only strengthen the trade from Brian Burns a year ago. I'm with you. Now, let's spin this forward to the quarterback conversation. And I think the idea, Bryce, next week on the podcast is we should kind of go through some of the quarterbacks not named Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. If we could do a little more homework on what we like and we don't like. I know you kind of joked about Kyle McCord in the past. Joking.
Let me just say this. I really come around to this idea. First and foremost, I'm going to make this very clear. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm not trying to toot myself on the horn, and I'm being openly transparent. When it comes to working in sports radio and prepping on NFL drafts, and I did 10 plus years on the DA show, working national sports radio where college football was such a big deal, I, over the years, have fallen in love with the NFL draft and watching college guys make the move to the NFL. I have been so dead wrong on multiple quarterbacks in their transition, namely Josh Rosen. Put my hand up. I thought Josh Rosen was going to be awesome. He's basically, I just looked up, he's at like a law school in Pennsylvania now. And I have been dead on right. I mean, basically from week 2 on a season ago, I thought Jaden Daniels would probably be the best quarterback in that draft. And we had talked about a lot on One Giant Step, the idea of losing for Jaden Daniels. And that's just one example either way. I'm saying this to say I understand that my examination of quarterbacks is not without flaws, and I can be completely wrong. But I have been right on guys before. I think the hate and the vitriol that has happened over the last month and a half at Shedeur Sanders is so ridiculously over the top. Of course he's a quarterback with flaws. Of course he is. But a lot of what I've seen with Shedeur Sanders, the way he handles the media, the way he stands in there as his offensive line sucks, as tough as nails and delivers throws, he has an NFL arm. I just want that on the record to say, I still think taking Abdul Carter at 3, if that's what they do, I don't know how anybody fights it and goes, oh my God, what did they do? However, the quarterback position is so important that if you're going to pass on Shedeur Sanders and he does end up becoming like legitimate, let's just call it year 1, legitimately good year 1 for somebody else, New Orleans, the Jets, the Raiders, insert whoever makes the move. I think it's fair to say at the end of the year that in back-to-back years where a regime and a general manager wouldn't even think of taking Bo Nix, who we saw in year 1. Now, jury's still out. He could have a big fallback year. We don't know what J.J. McCarthy is. We're not high on him. But let's say J.J. McCarthy is a big year with Kevin O'Connell. So let's just play that imagination. Yeah. They didn't do that. And if Shedeur Sanders goes and he has a big year, all I'm saying, Bryce, is we're still stuck in this point about having a high first-round pick and not throwing the dart on the quarterback. And you could have multiple examples by the end of this next season where their evaluation was wrong in passing on the quarterback, and they stuck to the idea of, well, we're picking 3rd. If Shedeur is really valued at 8, 9, or 10, no, screw the value process. Trust your instinct. If they pass on him, they pass on him. But if they pass on him and he's good, you're going to have back-to-back years, man, where you passed on quarterbacks that could have been franchise changers. And that's still a more important position than pass rush. So, again, I'm okay. I'm stamping the approval with Abdul Carter. But let's not act like this ends on draft night with Abdul Carter, because you're still going to have major questions if Shedeur takes off.
Of course, no. Of course it doesn't end on draft night. And there could be major repercussions for this front office if Shedeur turns into a top 10, 15 quarterback in the NFL this next season. I don't think you're going to see that drastic of a change. I don't think you're going to see that amazing a play from Shedeur Sanders to where within a year that they screwed up on that pick. If you do, then it's really bad. But I think hindsight's 20/20. We could talk about any hypothetical going down the road. Anything can happen, Shaun. Literally anything can happen. They could draft Abdul Carter. He could tear his ACL, knock on wood. Hopefully it doesn't happen. They could draft him healthy. He sucks. Like, anything can happen at this point. You take the most sure option on the board, best player available, when you've got so many holes to fill, and when you're not 100% sold on the quarterback who's going to be there. And that's what we've heard.
But again, I'm with you on that. Like, fundamentally, I want you to believe in a quarterback to take him. Fundamentally, I get that. But there does come the point in time where the world is not perfect, but the NFL world dictates without a quarterback, you're still going to be screwed in the old-time climb, like a young quarterback, to get there and figure that out. Dude, like, all right. So then next year we're going to be in the same boat. And I'm going to tell you, a little spoiler alert, next year, I don't think the Giants, if they take Abdul Carter, are going to be picking in the top 5. Where they pick beyond 5, I don't know. But I think they're going to be a competitive, feisty football team. Doesn't make them a 10-win team.
Yeah.
If they live in the 7 to 13 range of picks next year. But, the top picks end up being quarterbacks, and you have like a Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Drake May kind of year. Then we're going to be sitting here looking at the Bo Nix of next year going, are you going to pass now on that? I just don't think the Giants realize there's not this perfect world where you're ultimately always going to be full blown. Yup, absolutely in love. So with that, I say, Bryce, and I think I think we go deeper dive next week on the podcast on this. if you're going to make the decision to pass on quarterback at 3 with Abdul Carter, okay, you want to tell me it's more pro Carter than it is anti Sanders, and Shedeur Sanders
Yeah.
slides to the late teens and 20s, and then you decide, you know what, now we're going to trade up. Like I live with that. I'm not sure yet if I'd live with that with Jackson Dart. Like if they're trading back up, depending on where we're talking about. 31, 32 is just virtually a second round pick with the 5th-year option. I got to see where that goes. If you get, okay, let's just say Sanders goes somewhere else, you don't get him. Cam Ward goes first overall. And you're entering a world at pick 34 where we wake up on that Friday and some combination of Dart, Jalen Milroe, Stuck, the old quarterback from Louisville, are all on the board. I think where I stand 2 weeks out, Bryce, is you've committed to building the team the right way. I think pick 34 is almost as important as pick number 3 in terms of building this roster the right way.
Yeah.
I would rather not buy a lotto ticket at 34 at quarterback at that point. I'd rather take one of these deep D tackles, the Hampton, the running back from North Carolina. Insert if an offensive tackle falls here to 34. I would rather go that route at 34 than go, well, now we got to find our young quarterback. Like, to me, Bobby Skinner, who we had on last week, put out a tweet about the hit rate on the day 2 and day 3 quarterbacks, and it's like 3 for 50 or whatever it is in the last however many years. Jalen Hurts is an enigma. Can't say it can't happen, and the Jalen Milroe can't be that, and the skill set. But I'm not looking to buy lotto tickets if you've now invested in making the team that much better right away with Abdul Carter. I would rather invest in positions that are going to help me sooner than hope you magically found a way to skirt getting your franchise quarterback.
You're preaching to the choir here. There's nothing to disagree with on that. If the Giants at 34 decide to take Milroe, they decide to take Dart, I assume that both those guys could potentially be drafted in the first round. If you screw up on that, if you mess up with that, then you're sacrificing another hole you could have filled at 34. Yeah. 34 is technically another first round pick. It's right
you could get. You've seen the D tackles that are really get a monster D tackle to put next to. Now you're talking about trenches. My God.
Yeah. And now, now at that point, you look to trade Kayvon.
Yeah,
like you look to trade Kayvon at that point.
I don't even have the time right now on the pod to fight with you about that.
We got to talk about. We need to do at some point this offseason. We got to do like an entire episode.
Yeah, I think that's true.
What happens with Kayvon?
I don't think the time is now, Bryce. I don't think the time is now. That could be one of those 2 weeks after the draft
June,
podcast.
July,
that's something to look forward to. All right, I think we should leave that here, and I think next week on the podcast, we may or may not have a guest, but if not, regardless, I want Bryce's thoughts on Shuck, McCord, Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, because whether we fundamentally disagree or not, that might be something the Giants do, and I think we should kind of digest what we think or what works and are these guys worth it here at 34 or how crazy we will go if they do that. Please download, subscribe to One Giant Step. If it's the first time you're finding us, awesome. Come on aboard, hit download, subscribe every time a new podcast drops. The last 2 weeks in a row we recorded on a Friday. There are weeks recorded on a Monday, a Tuesday. Look, this is the way it is with a football offseason, depending on the day and depending on the time. We will drop that. Also, of note, if you're going out to the Giants watch party for the draft on draft night, round 1, that Thursday night, it is at MetLife Stadium. I know they had put tickets on sale. Beforehand, from 2 to 6:25, obviously the whole Evan and Tiki crew, including myself, will be at American Dream across from the parking lot. We're working on details on where at American Dream we will be. But we're going to do a whole show leading up to round 1 of the draft from outside MetLife Stadium. So come on, say hello. Come by and, give you some in-person One Giant Step questions as well. Follow Bryce Gelman at Bryce Gelman. You can follow me at Shaun Morash. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend, and thanks for taking One Giant Step with us.